All right, so we'll re-adjourn here. Thanks very much for the refreshments. That was very, very nice. More sugar than what I needed.
So I think as part of the discussion, before we do the discussion, I think we have to officially go into a joint meeting, which I think the EDA would call, and then we'll have to do a roll call.
Yeah, we.
Okay, well, we'll call the joint meeting together. Mr. Barham, approval as well.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and do the joint roll call.
Okay, we'll start with the EDA. Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Ms. Link.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
We have a quorum. And with the PPIC, Mr. Barham.
Yes.
Mr. Bento.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Reinberg.
Yes.
And Captain Watkins. We have a quorum.
Sounds great. And we're going to deviate slightly from the agenda and allow the PPIC to go ahead and make their presentation first.
Oh, now I get to be first. Okay.
Complained about not being first last.
Now I'm getting- okay, thank you.
Sounds like you're more exciting the presentation than us, so go for it.
All right, thank you very much. And thanks to Rob and the EDA for getting this PowerPoint back together here. This is pretty much what we shared with the City Council in our meeting with them. So some of you may have seen it, but I'll run through it real quick just in case there's any points that anybody needs to see. So very, very nice slogan here, 90 miles of shoreline, 360 degrees of opportunity. This is a kind of important slide because this tells a lot about what the PPIC, the reason that we were set up and just what we can do. I don't want to read everything about it, but there's some very important powers here. We can acquire, own, lease, and dispose property, acquire, construct, develop, maintain, operate wharves, docks, and piers, borrow money, incur debt, and issue bonds, acquire, construct, maintain, operate commercial, manufacturing, government facilities, and so forth and so on. But a lot of what we can do is unfortunately not what we do now because of the fact that we're somewhat limited in the amount of shoreline that we have control over. I think most everybody is aware that so much of our shoreline is controlled by either the U.S. Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Port of Virginia. The PPIC was originally set up to operate, which was, I think, called the Tidewater Terminal, which became Portsmouth Marine Terminals when the ports were consolidated back in the late 70s. So that got turned over to the Commonwealth. So a lot of what we are able to do now focuses mainly on the industrial side and not the port side, although there are a couple of facilities that we are still looking at or still watching over. Our commissioners, 5 of them are here. 5 of us are here today. The other 2, Mr. Toops and Mr. Wallace, are not here. All of us, again, without going into too much detail, all of us have pretty much a maritime background, so we do maintain that maritime focus so that we can look over that side of the community. Okay, these are the 2 facilities that we are currently actively involved in. The Burton's Point Road facility, there are 2 parcels there. One was the former school board operations facility, which was closed out. The second one just to the south of that, it's a little hard to see. That was a Vane Brothers parcel that we purchased from Vane Brothers about 2 years ago. These 2 parcels together, once the AWI remediation is done, will give us about a 14-acre industrial site. So this is something that we are working on now that may be a couple of years down the road before it's ready, but it will be a very nice site for industrial development. The other facility is the PER property. This is the old Allied site. It is, if you ever go across the Jordan Bridge, if you're going to the east, it will be right under the bridge on your left-hand side. This was sold to Mr. Salomon's or PER Properties back in 2010. And it is part of the remediation site. There's been a lot of activity over there as far as the dredging, the building of the bulkhead to contain all of that sediment that is part of the Superfund cleanup. Once all of that is done, he will have the ability to put in a marginal wharf there that could accommodate roughly a 600-foot long ship. So if he ever does, or if he ever is able to get this operation up and run into its full capacity, it could be a very nice marine terminal. His original plans, I believe, are still in the works as far as putting a grain operation there. I think he's had some issues with zoning and permits because of the type of storage facilities that he wants to put up. So that's still maybe a bit down the road, but he is actively working on the aggregate operation. He's putting up some cement silos, and that is all moving forward as we speak. And I believe that's it. I'll back up if anybody wants to look at this again. Any questions, any comments from the PPIC side? Yes, sir.
I've got a couple of them. The Vane Brothers property, what is in between there? I can't quite make that out. It looks like you have a property, they're adjacent to each other, but it looks like there's a larger property.
To the south?
Yeah, directly to the south of where
That's basically wetlands.
Okay.
And to the southeast is their active facility. I don't have a pointer on, I guess I don't have a pointer. But just to the southeast in that corner, that's where their actual dock is and their office buildings. To the left of that, you'll see that's mainly wetlands, and then we have those two facilities together.
Is that next to it as well? The one you just circled, is that wetlands as well, or is that?
I believe that's part of the
park right now. Yeah. That's the park right here.
Right.
And then this is wetlands, and this is a.
Okay. How many acres is that
terminal.
one where the arrow sits on or at the top?
The Vane Brothers property is about 8 acres. School board property is about 6 acres. We had to have wetlands delineation, which gave us actually a little bit more land. So altogether, once it's said and done, we should have 14 acres developable, all in that one parcel.
And I hate to keep asking a ton of questions, but what's the access from the one property to the other? I mean, is there enough room there to put a conveyor belt, or is there a road that connects?
They will be essentially it'll be one large field there when it's done. There's nothing between them. It'll be turned into one site, 14 acres
You're going
square.
to delineate the wetlands.
It's already been.
It's already been
Oh,
done.
it already has?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There's no wetlands between the school board property and the Vane Brothers property. It's all one square, all available.
That could be a nice piece of property.
That's what I'm saying. 14 acres, ready to go.
That's why we've been doing it for all these years.
But we're still several years out till
Because
that's
the
actually
EPA.
going to be a brown site ready to go.
Okay.
Now, does the Army Corps of Engineers also have any oversight with the properties?
No, not the Army Corps of Engineers. The only oversight we actually have is the EPA as far as the Superfund cleanup. There are several steps that we have gone through and that we will continue to have to go through as far as the oversight from an environmental side. But once it's done, it will be what's called a brownfield.
Right.
Which means basically it'll be capped off, and there will be some limitations and restrictions as to what can be put on that property, but for the most part, it'll be ready to go.
I'm sorry, now I'm really intrigued.
Now go ahead. I might not be able to answer them all.
Do you have a working and active pier currently at that property?
No, it is all inland.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and this is something that we're looking at down the road, hopefully, but to the east of that, all of those docks, that's Navy property. There have been just a couple of maybe brief discussions with the Navy as far as at some point down the road, 1 year maybe, having the opportunity to either work with the Navy somehow or maybe be able to take control of that property if the Navy ever decides that it's no longer to their benefit to use it.
So my next question was going to be water depth, but I guess that's irrelevant because you can't moor a vessel up there to unload.
Well, what we would do, and Captain Watkins can really speak to this, is if we were ever able to get that property, it would be to take the finger piers out of there because they're basically only usable for tying up for storage. But if you pull all those finger piers out of there, you could end up with about, what, a 1,200-foot marginal wharf?
1,600.
1,600-foot wharf.
You might be able to transload to a barge or something like that if you needed to, or...
You could, and I mean, with a 1,600-foot pier there, you could put a Cape-size ship in there, 120,000-ton deadweight ship, and you had the channel depth there at 40 feet. It certainly would be a valuable piece of property from the commercial side if the Navy were to ever decide that they no longer need it. It is still being used, but mainly for storage and parking. So I can't say that it's going to just be turned over one day, but it's certainly something that we want to keep an eye on.
To your knowledge, has the city pursued any remediation concerning these sites at all? Because there are brownfield grants I know that are available
Remediation as far as
for those particular parcels.
only working through the EPA. That's pretty much
EPA
all under
does
the
all that.
EPA's control right now.
Sometimes the city can pursue things too.
Well, the city is closely working with the EPA. We generally get about twice a year, we'll get an update from them as to where we are. But this is, for right now, it's all EPA's expenditures. So we don't want to be spending any money on it if we don't have to.
I was thinking more about the grant opportunities for remediation. There are grant funds that normally are available for parcels like this, so that's why I was curious about that.
Okay, that's something I need to look into.
Yeah.
Is this in a position for sale now?
What's that, the Navy, or our property? It's not ready. In fact, what's happening, there's a lot of activity going on, and it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, as it were, but to the north of that is the Atlantic, what do they call it now, Atlantic Precast?
Yeah, coastal precast?
Coastal,
Yeah. No, it's
I can't forget, it used to
right
be,
next to Precon, right? The coastal precast.
maybe it is Coastal Precast, but that's an active operation there, and in order to have their part of that property remediated and capped off, all of their work is being moved down to our area, to the school board property, as far as storage, while that's being done, and then that'll all move back over there. So there's a lot of working parts to this whole thing that will really go on for the next couple of years before it's done.
I may have a couple people that might be interested, and they may even put the investment in, so.
Okay, we'd be delighted to talk to them. So they just need to understand that this is not going to be tomorrow or next week or next
That
month.
works actually better for them, I think.
Okay.
Well, there's additional, Mr. Jones, didn't we ask the Commonwealth of Virginia for an additional $20 million, or was it $2 million? I'm sorry, I can't remember, to help the EPA was missing some funding that we put in our legislative package for the governor's budget.
Sure.
I don't recall the numbers.
So thank you. Yes, Ms. Simmons, you're right. The EPA mentioned that there was some additional work that they could do at the site with the remediation, and they were looking for the state to contribute that extra funding. And so there's been some back and forth. And you're right, council did ask as part of our legislative packet that the state contribute that additional funding to help with that remediation of that project.
Okay, that's fine.
Is there any way to tie that into the old PEC site right adjacent on the other side behind Wheelberator? Because that's still a Superfund site too, correct?
Well, that there may be, but there's a whole bunch of issues with that site.
Oh, sure.
Right.
No, I'm just thinking if you're going to make a request for the funding, it'd be nice to tie them in together.
Right. Well, we know that we have control of the school board site that is ours, but that PEC site is still probably on at this point.
That's,
Technically, it's yours too.
Right.
Anything else?
Where the South Annex site is there, you see those 5 finger piers coming out of there? Well, more than likely what would have to happen is those piers would have to be demolished because you couldn't put a marginal bulkhead to the east of that and tie a ship up there. It would impede the channel. So those finger piers would have to come down maybe all the way or maybe half the way. But We've been looking at that piece of property since 1874, and I don't think we're ever gonna get it.
Gracious.
Were you on that committee? What is immediately to the east of those piers on the Norfolk side?
That's Purdue.
Oh, that's Purdue. Okay.
That's my kingdom.
That's your kingdom, got it.
But that would be a wonderful piece of property.
If you remember, when the city did talk briefly to the Navy about that property, the only good thing the Navy said was that, or the two good things they said was that they have no strategic use for that property going forward. They did say that. And then the other thing was that as time goes on, they would consider talking about it, but that's about as far as.
You know, Captain Brown, the commanding officer of the Naval Shipyard, who's been so wonderfully in touch with Portsmouth city government, even on the night of the Christmas parade in Norfolk, he rode on our float, and there was much discussion about that property as we rode through the Norfolk streets on the Christmas parade, because, you know, they've got so much work to do there in the shipyard, you know, billions and billions of dollars they'll never have, that, you know, anything that they can take off their list is helpful to the federal government. And our congressional delegation is well aware that we are interested in that too. So as long as we can keep Captain Brown around, that's a good thing too.
So that's the main thing, is to keep our congressional delegation, keep this in front of them.
Yeah.
Very little that we can do from this little body here of 7 commissioners, but if we can get it to Richmond and to Washington, keep it in front of them, then maybe one day, maybe not in our lifetime, but maybe one day something will happen.
It's kind of like that in the parking lot of the post office Coast Guard building that we've been trying to get since
Right.
Yeah.
the 1970s that I know of. It was going to be the last thing John Warner did, I seem to remember.
For economic development, that's a prime piece of property for an automobile exchange. All the imported automobiles now seem to go to Baltimore. But all you have to do is flatten that piece of property. You've got parking there and everything.
Yeah, but Superior's Point.
And the bridge is not so high, ships can't get under.
And not only that, just as far as a marine terminal, a piece of property that size, that's not just for this area, but for the entire East Coast. You cannot find another piece of waterfront property that size and that available. So.
Is all of you all know, the BASF property, is that not eligible to be a kind of terminal operation because of the depth there?
The depth is real shallow, and you'd have to build way out into the river to make it useful. It's a
Yeah.
Or you have the demagnetization station out there too that keeps you from.
Right.
You could kind of go off towards the APM, or what is it, the VIG side now. I mean, you could reach out that way because you do have 50 feet of water, 45, 48 feet of water coming in there anyway.
You'd have to come out from that.
You'd have to really come out to the west.
So that's more approval from more federal bodies.
Right.
That's right.
Crossing over U.S. Amines property, correct? I mean,
That'd be a federal.
you got to.
If you came up with a good plan, I don't see how they can turn you down.
I don't either, George. Thank you.
I mean, I'm just, I hate to look at it and say the glass is half full. You know, that's a nice piece of property.
It is. It's
And
beautiful.
As much as we'd like to have it waterborne, there's nothing to say that you can't have a distribution center or something like that go in there.
I like the way you think. I believe glass is always half full too,
Yeah.
not half empty.
And
Okay, anything else? If not, I will pass the baton.
Great job.
I don't know if I did a great job.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I stumbled through it.
The cat's still up in the tree. It stimulates.
393,
Well, yeah. I'm trying to keep that piece of property in front of everybody.
Yeah.
while we are refocusing here, those of you all that come in on 164, you come in on 164 this morning? We've got one of those super ships in Virginia National Gateway, 13,200 containers. Take a look at it when you go by there.
Yeah.
But take a look quick, because they load them and get them out of here fast.
They may not be here this afternoon.
They don't play around with them for too long.
I'll bring you up to date on it.
Thank you for the informative presentation. That was a great
Thank you.
That was great.
conversation there. Commissioners, naturally, I'll be driving this thing, but feel free to jump in any way you feel important, and feel free, members of the PPIC, to ask any questions as we move through. This is a very similar presentation that we did to the City Council, I believe 2 work sessions ago now. But like you guys, we do have certain powers. We're a political subdivision with 7 members. As you can see, 6 of us are here. Our vice chairman is out on illness right now. But we do serve staggered 4-year terms. So we have the ability to acquire and dispose property, own and lease property, make loans and grants. And we also work very closely with the Economic Development Department for business and support development. And, 6 of our members are here. We have a very good cross-section of individuals in terms of their strengths and their professions. Several business people in the city, people who have worked in the development department, legal professions, procurement. We have a number of things covered here, so we've got a lot of good expertise on our board. I think our council did an excellent job putting this together. The clicker has died. Next. So one of our highlights, I guess you say, of our activities is local incentive program established in 2013. We do have a number of defined boundaries in commercial areas, downtown, uptown to midtown, Port Norfolk, Craddock. We did add Brighton and Truxton area. I guess that was the last iteration of our revisit. As you can see, we've been right active in previous years in terms of our grants. Facade improvements, we've got security grants and interior build-out grants, all 3. Currently, we are working on 2 approved grants that are still outstanding, and we're actually in the middle of our HADOC committee is actually evaluating program, hopefully with a recommendation coming back to us the very first of next year to address a few items. We do this pretty much yearly just to look it over, but also there was a couple recommendations of council that to possibly expand and or enhance and offer it to more businesses throughout the city. So hopefully that committee has definitely had some really great ideas that have come out, and it's really kind of due for us to have a nice thorough review of these grants since it's and this grant program, since we are now in our 5th year of activities. So here's our grants that we do offer. Kind of just mentioned that briefly. Facade improvement grants to $25,000 to help to improve the facades. You'll see many of the downtown areas businesses have been touched in this. A number of grants have been approved by this body, and I think anybody who's kind of paid attention since its iteration and beginning can see our impact has been pretty significant down in the downtown area. Not forget there's other areas in our city covered, so if you know any businesses that need assistance in that area, we certainly want to reach out and help them. Interior build-out grants, we have a number of businesses that have also taken advantage of the downtown area, up and down High Street. And also we do have a safety and security grant and windows of opportunity grants as well. So, please share that with your friends that may be going into business or currently in business in those zones. We'd love for you to try to help expand that program and reach more people. Here's a list of our properties and some of our successes. The Midtown area, Midtown Marketplace is completed. We did that. I believe Commissioner Kelly was a veteran of that activity. Harbor Vista, we just completed that. North Pier, which right beside us over here, is we're going into the next phases of that process and project. 1500 block of High Street, we do have option agreement. 710 Lincoln, which was a small piece of property, We are into, I believe, moving under that with a small retail, fast food place, I believe. We also have 219 Pavilion. 710 Crawford Street is the city of Portsmouth. We do have that under ownership of the city of Portsmouth. And 1021 and 1130 High Street, phase 1 and 2 are completed of some remediation work that we've had to done, and then we're looking to get that on the market as soon as possible. Got a couple properties there in Victory, and we are naturally moving through some challenges there at the Victory Village properties. 3215 Academy Avenue is another one of our success stories that are continuing to work through that for redevelopment of a Portsmouth business that we needed to relocate. So
That's the old Churchland Library.
the old Churchman Library, yes.
What is 700, 710 Crawford Street? It says city owns that. What is that piece of property?
It's right across the street, the two.
Oh, that's
small-
the two buildings, the old police buildings?
Yeah.
The old police building, yes. And with that, naturally have any questions and answers, we certainly answer. And then if there's any comments from DDA.
You had mentioned that you're moving through another phase of the North Pier. What's going on with that?
I believe we're in the process of updating a study for that, and I think that's the kind of our next step. I believe Breeden had some good success over at the Harbor Vista, and that's going to be our, I believe it was a study that had to be updated from some years back, I believe, and engineering plans and things of that nature.
Is it North Pier is down here?
Yeah.
It shows-
It's Breeden's
Pier,
phase
right,
2.
right between the marina and the dry store.
Right.
Yeah, right out here.
I think for the edification of the public that may watch this later, the grant program that the chairman talked about, I think people think about things like, you'll notice Cafe Europa's new awnings and signage and whatever. That's a real good example of using that kind of format. I think Kathy Rebel used it in her little shops, starting that business. But also, some of the interior stuff, when Monument Construction was building out the Legends Brewery, they used the interior build-out grant for the electrical. You can imagine how expensive the electrical was from the redo of the number 1 High Street building for Legends Brewery. So it's not just a pretty awning or a window, that vanilla shell or those interior build-outs can be a big deal. I mean, and the grant maximum from EDA didn't even come close to paying half of their electrical bill, but
They appreciate it.
some money's better than none when you've got bills that big. So.
Absolutely.
Chime in. I mean, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'd probably say that 8 out of 10 businesses up and down High Street have taken advantage of the facade side of it alone. The scariest thing for any town that's going through a redevelopment situation is the broken window theory. You have somebody going empty next door, the windows start to get broke, things like that. It's really hard for the tenants next door. And this has really been able to give a little shot in the arm and a facelift to a lot of our High Street corridor, and it looks fantastic. It doesn't look as tired. And one thing I'd really like to mention, the safety and security grant is not even a non-matching. It's free. You want to put up security cameras and lighting, it's there. Just ask for it. So that's not even a matching program. I think it's up to $2,000 currently. And that helps you with your insurance. The police and fire, they would love you to do that, because anytime you get things well lit or have some security up, it's always a plus. But yeah, just trying to find ways to kind of drive home your downtown corridor.
I just wanted to also add on the facade improvement grant, there's actually I believe PRHA has a complimentary incentive program that they can borrow money to get some of the work done, and then they can go back and get some of it granted back through us. So finding ways for small businesses to be able to take as much advantage of the program, and I think working with PRHA has allowed us to really give the business owners an opportunity for the best looking facades and a safe place to go for people to go shop. I took my granddaughter there Sunday.
But we're also talking about Craddock, Truxton, Brighton, other areas of the city that are ripe for development that could take advantage of this, and we're looking at ways to, right now, to expand it even more. So opportunity all around.
I believe Cafe Europe that project actually was a little bit of PRHA and a little bit of EDA as well.
Yes,
Kind of
it
played
was.
played into that success story. So
think
actually, we're
Marianne
always
used to
looking
say.
for opportunities to work with our other commissioners and other bodies. Actually, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to, when we get together and meet like this, to see if there's any shared opportunities. That way, one hand knows exactly what the other hand is doing, and I certainly welcome these opportunities.
I'd encourage these two bodies to do this every December, because I bet the calendar's this will happen again, and it's a good excuse to put these two bodies together, frankly.
Sure, yeah. I'd actually like to do it maybe even twice a year. I think it would be a good, great exercise. Like was mentioned before, you guys were kind of born out of the EDA of sorts, and it would be good to see if there's any symmetries and anything we can do to make council's life a little easier, and bring them some great projects.
No, I fully agree. Let's try to do that.
It definitely, because they have a lot more overarching power and authority and abilities over here on the Portsmouth Port and Industry Commission. They're vital, and there's things that we need to help drive through. They're a great ally and a resource.
Absolutely.
And if there's any way we can help you guys with some of the stuff you're working with, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I didn't know about all these grants, and that's certainly something that we can all work together on.
Sure.
Something I'd like to add is shifting gears just a little bit, but looking forward again. And Mr. Jones, I'm going to put you on the spot with this. I know we've recently are in the process of finishing our comprehensive plan for the next, 10 to 20 years. I think it's important for both bodies, and I know I personally look to that plan to help drive our efforts. So we're all working in synergy, and all of our efforts are kind of nesting under what we at the city have determined is that 10 and 20-year plan. Is that going to be briefed out to these bodies anytime in the near future? I imagine after it gets to city council. Do you have a timeline on that?
Sure.
Just to help drive our planning moving forward.
Sure. So that process has been ongoing for a little over a year at this point, and I think we expect that by this summer that we will have a final plan for council's approval. I know that Mr. Moore has had Mr. Sweats, who's the project manager for our planning department, brief both bodies as we have moved along in that process. And like you, we are looking forward to that serving as a guide based on feedback from our residents of the things that they'd like to see here in the city as we, work toward the future. And so I don't think there's any problem at all with having the different bodies in the city that are volunteer boards get updated on that plan. So that's something we'll take back to.
Maybe that's a good summer meeting strategy.
Right. Absolutely.
There's a comp plan update.
I agree.
All right. Thanks.
Second.
Sure.
So real quick, from a staff standpoint, it's great for us to be able to take the opportunity to sit back and let you all speak. Obviously, there are there's some synergy between the two boards. We like that as we go forward with our rebranding of economic development, as we take our new focuses going forward, and we will discuss these further as we move forward with our EDA retreat. Potentially, we would love to have some synergy there as well. Maybe invite you all to a day or a part of that retreat.
Absolutely.
But we are looking forward to working with both bodies. We also look forward again to showing and unveiling our strategic plan from an economic development standpoint and how that will include both bodies. And we think this is a great time and opportunity for us to show the collaboration that we have in the city, not only between the two boards, but also with council and with the other departments within the city. Certainly, we are not only updating the comprehensive plan, but we're also updating our zoning ordinance, which will, while we have that plan, that the comp plan that kind of shapes our vision, the ordinance will allow us to carry it out. So as we look forward from an economic development standpoint, we are here. Staff is encouraged and very excited about what we bring in 2018, and we just look forward to working together with you guys.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Well, that's great. Councilman, do you have anything you want to add?
I'll be here.
Before we adjourn, Chris Gullickson, we hesitated to call or didn't get around to calling on him, and sorry to keep you so long, Chris,
No,
but
not at all.
why don't you introduce yourself
Sure.
briefly and tell us what...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Chris Gullickson with the Port of Virginia. At the Port, I'm on the economic development side of the organization. I had the real good fortune of, on a day-to-day basis, getting to work with Mr. Moore and Mario, and known for a number of years in my economic development career. So it's a great addition to the city staff here in the city of Portsmouth. I thought what I would do is just take a few minutes to provide a brief update on kind of where we are at this point in the year. Obviously, coming to the end of 2017. As most of you know or are very aware, it's been an exciting year at the Port of Virginia. There's been a number of great announcements, volumes that are at record levels, and obviously a lot of that impacts this community here in the city of Portsmouth. So first of all, just want to let you know November was another great month. I mean, volumes continued to exceed year-over-year marks, and we saw about a less than 2% growth, but still 240,000 TEUs, one of our best Novembers ever on record, putting us on pace ultimately to have one of our best calendar years as a port. To date, our volume is up about 7.5% year over year. Those are significant numbers. I know many times people talk about the rail, and the rail has increased, and that typically is going out of this market. But our truck continues to increase too. The gate moves are continuing to see significant increases, which is all positive because in those containers are commodities and objects that are going into local manufacturing facilities, warehouses, here in this host community and abroad throughout the Commonwealth. But we continue to focus our attention on growing the local captive market, and that's why the dialogue is so ever important with the City of Portsmouth as we continue to explore ways to leverage some of the new development that's going on here within the city. Obviously, the interchange, I think, is pretty much finished that building there, and that's a really exciting opportunity. I think a lot of folks that we're interfacing with, manufacturers, warehousemen, are understanding and realizing that, hey, there's product right near the port, and obviously that's a location advantage that no one can take away. And so really excited, and I think we are very optimistic that there's going to be promising opportunities coming into 2018. As it relates to the river, public remarks are currently open as it applies to the southern branch of the Elizabeth River. The Army Corps of Engineers released that report last week. This is a draft for public comments where they begin to reevaluate the federal importance to commercial waterway traffic from pretty much Lambert's Point, or PMT, down in the southern branch of the Elizabeth River. That public comment period will close on January 15th of 2018. What I'll do is, following this meeting, I'll send to Mr. Moore the report. It's an extensive report from the Army Corps of Engineers, and definitely would recommend any comments from both boards, and hopefully in a positive nature, supporting the reevaluation of going from parts of the channel at 40 to 45, and then obviously different depths. It's, I think, a 4 or 5 stage dredging exercise currently being evaluated by the Army Corps of Engineers. But again, very applicable to both these commissions to voice their support in seeing that move forward. Also, at Virginia National Gateway in Portsmouth, the project is really proceeding nicely. We're expecting our first delivery of the automated stacking cranes. We call them RMGs. They'll begin to arrive in January. I think it's going to trend towards the end of January. I'll make sure that Economic Development is aware of that date for potential photo ops, and it's going to be pretty cool to see 6 cranes arrive fully constructed and will be offloaded from that vessel onto our berth and then placed in position. That is lining up with the timeline that we will begin to bring stacks online, new capacity, which is really needed in 2018. There at Virginia National Gateway in Portsmouth. So really promising, excited the project is proceeding. We're going to kick off NIT. The civil work has already begun over at Norfolk International Terminal, and we'll begin to really get into that project here in 2018. And then finally, another program I wanted to just make the both commissions aware of. The City of Portsmouth has been a recipient in the past of a program called Aid to Local Ports, typically through Parks and Rec. But I will tell you, Another nonprofit here in the city did complete some of their funding requirements, and that is the Elizabeth River Project. And we did, in fact, pay out their grant award for this recent fiscal year, which was of $25,000, and they have completed their requirement, and we did, in fact, issue them that reimbursement. So continue to have a community disbursement of resources to better all of our lives, as we do want to focus on our stewardship as a Port Authority, especially here in our host communities like City of Portsmouth. So with that, that'll probably be the end of my remarks, unless there are questions from either commission. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's one thing about the Port Authority, there's stewardship efforts that not too many people are aware of, but they funded $100,000 to the Children's Museum of Virginia.
Did not know that. Nope. I knew they were integral to Paradise Creek, but
That was over 4 years, starting about 2007, 2008, something like that.
That's interesting.
And the city was also, as a side, in the most recent go-around for aid to local ports, an allocation was provided to Port Side, the new Port Side. Granted, now that's through Parks and Rec, but we have in fact allocated dollars to that project as well.
you guys, they were involved with the pier at City Park as
The
well.
pier at City Park was also part of that grant.
That was
That's
a grant.
correct.
Yeah, thank you for being a good partner.
Thank you for being a great host community. The partnership here.
Are we good?
With the completion of VIG and the completion of the Craney Island new container terminal, which is another 570 acres, those maritime businesses are going to need some auxiliary help. So that's up to the economic development and Roger and Robert and all to look for those small businesses. You don't have to have one that has 25 acres. If you have one that has 2 acres, business can go in there.
That's right.
Very important.
Absolutely.
Concur.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I did want to just comment on one other thing. One of our neighboring cities, they have hastened to do some additional taxes on bond financing because there is the discussion that the tax-exempt bond financing may be going by the wayside. So certainly we want to let our Portsmouth businesses who can qualify, we want to make them very much aware of that in case they may have some projects that they may want to quicken in order to take advantage of the tax-exempt bond financing.
Sure.
With that, close on the EDA side.
All right.
Same with PPIC. I think we're done with our business.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's the worst thing we've ever had.
It's just a hard thing.